Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you, and today we've got a comparison, but I want to start by pointing out that one of the knives here on the table in front of me is going to be one of the knives by which most other knives are measured. If you're making a modern folder these days, you are really up against one knife in particular in terms of popularity and love and usefulness and, general knife enthusiast opinion. And I'm not talking about the Sebenza 21. I'm talking about the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Now, wait for my lighting to go back to normal since I had that stupid yellow piece of paper there. And we'll get into this discussion. The Para 2, guys, is very, very well loved. And for very, very good reason. The Para 2 is honestly a great knife. It's comfortable, it's lightweight, it's useful, it's durable. Lots of things to love about the Para 2. And if you're going to be Benchmade and come along with a knife in this size, at this price point, with these materials, you're pretty much going to have to go head to head with the Paramilitary 2. So if you're looking at one or both of these knives, and I think there would be a lot of people who are, or maybe you have a Para 2 and you're thinking, well, does this knife do all the things that I needed to do? Should I even bother caring about the Benchmade Freek? Okay. Now, what I'd like to do is compare these two side by side, talk about pluses, minuses, strengths, weaknesses, and come out with a conclusion of which one is better. Which one should we prefer? Which one, if you're only going to buy one, obviously I have both, but if you're only going to buy one, which one should you buy? Okay, so that's where we're going with this. Let's start off by pointing out that these knives are very close in size. They're very close in weight. They're very close in price point. They're fairly close in materials, and they're certainly very close in intended purpose. Both of these are primarily EDC blades. Maybe we could even say EDC plus. That is, they can do some slightly harder tasks because of the better ergonomics and larger handles that they have that maybe, can take them a little bit beyond just your average EDC knife. But the question remains, which one is superior? All right. Now, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. And I can tell you by introduction here, and I want to see if you guys can see where I'm going with this. There's one of these knives, if there was a slight change in materials, a slight tweak to the design, I would be speaking very differently in this video, okay? The Para would be in real danger of being overshadowed. Okay, and of course, you guys probably know I'm already talking about the handle materials on the Freek. If this was G10 and the construction was just a little bit different, I think this would be a very different video. Okay, so let me say that right up front. Now, let's go ahead and get into this and point out, by the way, the price point on these, this is a sprint run Para 2. So obviously we're going to assume that this is just a standard version of the Paramilitary 2 with S30V steel and standard, black G10 scales. This, of course, is the Benchmade Freek. There's only one version of it, or there are no sprint runs of this knife with different steels, okay? So materials are all going to be the same, even though I know there are coated blades and serrated blades out there. So let's get into our comparison, beginning with size and weight. After all, we've got to carry this thing around with us all the time. Which one is going to be more comfortable to carry and give us more utility per the inconvenience of having this thing shoved in our pockets? And the Para 2 is a very well-known knife. We all pretty much know it's 8 1/4 inches, 3.5 inch blade, 4 3/4 inch handle, and weighs in at 3.8 or 3.9 ounces. This one on my scale is 3.9 ounces. Most published literature, websites and stuff are going to say 3.8 ounces. So very nice knife, under 4 ounces, so it's lightweight. Good size, right? The ergonomics are excellent. You're getting 3.5 inches of blade, which gives you quite a bit of utility. This is just a great knife, guys. In terms of what you have to carry at under 4 ounces, this is a very useful tool. Okay. Now, on the other hand, the Benchmade Freek, this guy is 8.5 inches, so 1/4 inch longer, 3 9/16 in the blade, 4 7/8 on the handle, and it weighs in at 3.7 ounces. So comes in a little bit lighter than the Para. Now it's very, very slightly different. Okay, if you just pick them up, you know, you're talking about 1/10 of an ounce. It's going to be pretty hard to distinguish the two. By the way, the thickness on these is very, very close. And in terms of carry, the pocket clips are pretty close as well. I know we normally discuss that under handle design, and we will, but I don't think there's a discernible difference here. So, in terms of size and weight, these guys are very, very close. I suppose one could make the argument that the VersaFlex coating on the Freek makes it a little difficult going in and out of pocket. I don't know. I don't find it to be all that bad. And I've got a fair bit of use on this. Yes, I have some tighter jeans where this can be a little bit of an issue, but generally speaking, I have not felt that the Freek was difficult going in and out of pocket. I've thought it was pretty good. Because of all of those points, guys, and you've heard all the numbers, I honestly have to say these are too close to call. If what you're looking for is which one is easier to carry, I really can't give you a definitive answer because these are, you know, they're within 1/10 of an ounce of each other. They're within fractions of inches, you know, very, very close all the way around. So in terms of that, I think hopefully you guys will bear with me if we call this first contest a tie. All right. Now, the next contest I don't think will be a tie because there's quite a bit of difference here. On the blade, we have in the Para 2 S30V steel normally. I know this is the S35VN Sprint Run, but normally S30V, we've got sort of a clip point or maybe a modified clip point, full flat grind, very, very pointy edge here. Bit of, you know, a nice thumb ramp here, thumb hole deployment, and a bit of a choil. Now, one complaint I've often made about the Para 2 is the fairly short cutting length for the size of the blade. Okay, that of course is because of the fact that you've got this choil here and because of the blade to handle ratio is not stellar on the Para 2. Over here on the Benchmade, we have a high flat grind, drop point blade, no finger choil at all, and S30V steel, again, I may have already said that. Instead of the satin finish that's on the Para, we have, you know, the Benchmade Stonewatch satin that you're familiar with if you've had a Benchmade knife. They all seem to have this sort of coating like that. Now, how do these blades compare? Well, let me say a couple of things. I like the Para 2, but the complaints I have about it are very, very pointed edge, not a whole lot of material back here, so I'm always a little nervous about dropping it. Not that I'm not nervous about this one, but this definitely has more material at the tip than the Para 2 does. It also has, for a knife, remember the size and weight here, almost the exact same size, almost the exact same weight, but look at how much extra cutting edge you've got. If I hold these two where their cutting edge is sort of side by side, you can see I get a lot more cutting edge on the Benchmade Freek than I do on the Para 2. The other thing is I get a slightly different blade shape. The Para 2 is all belly. It just has this gentle slope all the way along, and that's a very useful shape, and we've often talked about how nice it is. But the Freek is a little more traditional with the straight. Does that sound weird to you guys? The Freek is traditional. A little bit of straight edge here and then the belly out toward the front. A little more like what we're used to. So based on those comparisons, guys, I've got to give the blade to the Benchmade. Oh yeah, one more thing. The Freek is also a little thinner behind the edge, which does make it cut a little nicer, makes it a little bit better of a slicer. So for all of those reasons, I've got to actually give the blade to the Benchmade Freek. Even though I love the Para 2 blade, I know many of you guys do as well, I think the blade shape on the Benchmade definitely takes the day in that particular comparison. Now, the next comparison we always do is action, okay? Now, here's the problem, guys. The compression lock is a great lock. This knife is a free dropper. It's absolutely phenomenal. Very smooth, extremely high quality. This is just a wonderful knife to flip and play with and sit around watching TV and do this kind of stuff over and over again. And believe me, I have. That said, guess what? This Benchmade is also a free dropper. It's very, very smooth. You can actuate the lock and just flip it open and closed. It flicks really well. And I can even Spidey flick this guy. Now, there is obviously going to be the difference between the opening mechanism, thumb stud versus opening hole, and the lock, axis lock versus compression lock. Now, am I going to give you a definitive answer of which one's better? Not really. Both are strong, both are reliable, both are very enjoyable. Now, I suspect that some of you watching will have a preference, okay? Maybe you just love the axis lock and you want every single folding knife that's ever been made to incorporate an axis lock. And obviously, in that case, you're gonna prefer the Benchmade, right? If, on the other hand, you love the compression lock, which, by the way, I do, and love any knife that has a compression lock. I think it's a brilliant, brilliant locking mechanism. The biggest difference between these two mechanisms, they're both tons of fun to play with. They're both fast. They both deploy really nicely. The biggest difference is this kind of spring, more of a leaf spring, okay, is much, much more durable than the springs, the Omega springs in the axis lock, okay? So if there's a question of longevity, you're gonna get more longevity out of the compression lock just based on the cross-sectional area of the lock bar alone, okay? Now, in that sense, we have to, I would say, for longevity, give it to the Para. And really on this one, guys, all other things I believe are equal, right? They're both equally easy to actuate, okay? They're both fast. They're both smooth. You know, I really don't have any problems with either one. So we've got to give a slight edge to the Para on this one because of the fact that that spring is a little more durable. Now, in the life of these knives, in your use of these knives, is it possible that both of these could just last forever and you'll never need to replace either spring? Totally possible, right? So it could be a completely moot point, but remember, we're trying to do a head-to-head comparison and we're trying to consider every detail. And so for that, I think the compression lock has got to edge ahead just a little bit. Let's move on now to the handle construction, and the handle ergonomics. And so now we've got the G10 handle on the Para 2 with nested stainless steel liners, standoff construction. On the Benchmade Freek, we have the reinforced plastic. I think Benchmade calls it GRN. They might call it something else, but it's a reinforced plastic. And that's a strong material. I'm not complaining overly much about that. They've done this by, there's no backspacer here. It's just the two pieces matched together, okay? And then screw together. And then we have this VersaFlex coating. Now the VersaFlex is very comfortable, very, very grippy. The thumb ramp is not doing a whole lot, and that's typical of Benchmade. Their jimping is not always very sharp. On the other hand, the Spyderco jimping is perfect, which is almost always the case for Spyderco jimping. Some of the made in Taiwan Spydercos are not quite as grippy as this. So in terms of ergonomics, these guys are very close, but there's one thing that puts the Spyderco ahead for me, and that is the finger choil. Notice where my finger is in relation to the cutting edge on this guy. I can get right up close and do some detailed work. The Freek, I cannot do. I mean, I can kind of sneak my finger up here, but it's really not meant for it. And there's a much higher risk that I can slide that finger up onto the blade. So for most purposes, my finger is back here. Now, both of them do let me get my thumb up here on the blade. The thumb ramp is very comfortable and very functional, but ergonomically, I can get my finger closer to the cutting edge and therefore achieve a little more control with the Para 2. Okay, the other thing that's different about the Para 2 is the construction. Stainless steel, nested liners, heavily milled out to save weight. The Benchmade comes in just a teeny bit lighter than the Para, but has this honeycomb construction reinforced plastic. Again, I'm not trying to suggest that reinforced plastic is not strong, but the reality is if this knife were stainless steel liners with G10 scales, I would probably be having a different discussion now. Now, I think the ergos on the Para 2 would still maybe edge it ahead a little bit, but the biggest hit that I have on the Freek is the construction of this handle. Not only do I have questions about how long lasting the VersaFlex is going to be, now as I said, and I've said this before, in my use, the VersaFlex has held up really well, but you know G10 is tough, you know it's going to last forever, and so I've got to give the handle construction and ergonomics to the Spyderco on this one. All right, let's kind of talk overall, okay? Overall here, we have two really nicely made knives, both great knife companies. Now, there have been, and I think it sucks that there have been some serious questions about the quality control on the Benchmades. Spyderco tends to be a little better, and I will say they definitely deserve some credit for recently fixing their warranty. Now, how do I compare these two overall? I've got to say, guys, that unless there is some reason that you, and I'm going to give this more weight, okay? The Benchmade, I do like the blade better, and a blade is essentially the primary characteristic of a knife, okay? That said, I still think the Para gets the edge just a little bit, primarily because of construction. All right, sorry about that phone ringing in the background. Let me know if you're watching this, which one you would prefer. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and we will talk to you soon.